Sharon, thank you so much for doing this. Could you tell us who you are and where you're from and what you're interested in?
Sure. It's great to see you, Alex. Thanks for inviting me to do this. So I'm Sharon Street. I'm a professor of philosophy at NYU. I've been there my whole career so far since getting out of graduate school. And I specialize in metaethics, which, as your students probably know, is the subfield of ethics that sort of asks the most foundational questions.
That is right. We are doing metaethics at the moment, and metaethics is certainly in the book, but I'm pretty sure I have not yet mentioned the word metaethics. So it's so useful to have an explanation. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we're at the moment we're talking about ethics. Before that, we actually did some first order ethics.
Great. Yeah, so then this part of philosophy starts looking at sort of almost what's this subject matter at all in the first place when we argue about what's right and wrong or what's valuable. How do we understand that subject matter? Is it objective, subjective, et cetera? So.
Exactly. So for this segment of the course, we're reading two pieces, or we read two pieces. So one was an excerpt from Mackie's book, Ethics, Inventing Right and Wrong. And the other was your paper, Does Anything Really Matter, or Did We Just Evolve to Think So? And you're particularly well known for this, for bringing evolutionary considerations into the discussion of metaethics. Let me start by asking you a Mackie-related question. So you and Mackie have some agreements, but also some disagreements. So Mackie argues that there aren't any objective values, and you agree with that. You also argue that there aren't any objective values, but then the crucial difference is that Mackie concludes that ordinary moral judgments are false because he thinks that ordinary moral judgments have a claim to objectivity built into them, whereas you don't think that ordinary moral judgments are false. So obviously you're not persuaded by Mackie's case that ordinary moral judgments include a claim to objectivity. So can you say why you are unpersuaded?
Yeah, sure. That's right. So Mackie's an error theorist, and I am certainly not. I don't think we need to conclude that moral claims are sort of false across the board. And the way I would explain it is, so Mackie, in the selection, it sounds like the students read, he talks about objective values or morality presenting as having categorical requirements. So no matter what you happen to care about, these things bind you categorically and not just hypothetically. So one way to put so there's a sense in which I agree with Mackie that it's kind of part of the nature of morality to, so to speak, issue categorical commands. But one way of putting it is, it seems to me that it's part of the very idea of morality that it issue commands that are categorical with respect to one part of our nature, and in particular, the part of our nature that, wants certain things, desires, finds certain things pleasant or fun or convenient. But there's another much stronger kind of categoricity that we can imagine, which would be categoricity independent of our evaluative nature as a whole. So we're complex beings, evaluatively speaking. We find certain things fun and amusing and pleasurable, but we also, and in part due to evolution by natural selection, are capable of being motivated in other ways and taking certain things to be required, even if we don't really want to do them, and so forth. And so there's a way in which I think morality is best understood as categorical in this sense of it binds us independently of what we might happen to want at a given moment or what we find pleasurable or convenient, but we don't need to understand. It's not sort of built into the very concept of moral obligation that this stuff holds independently of our sort of evaluative natures as a whole. So that's
right. Okay. Yeah. Good. I think this is related to another question that I wanted to ask you. Well, I'll save that for the end. So the idea is that when it comes to, this is an example we also talked about, saving Singer's drowning child in a pond, whether you ought to save the child or not is not dependent on what you happen to want or not want in the moment, or find convenient or inconvenient. The fact that you have some pressing business meeting to go to is neither here nor there, but that doesn't mean that it's completely independent of human evaluative sensibility, whether you ought to save.
That's right. Yeah. So one way of putting it, I mean, my view does involve biting certain bullets. So if we imagine the person walking by the child drowning, if we imagine that that person just doesn't have a fiber of moral feeling or concern for others in their makeup, then my view does, that I don't talk much about in that piece that you read, does involve saying, well, that particular person doesn't ultimately have normative reason to stop.